Hey, what's up? Welcome to Geek Out. My name is Bim, and today I want to talk to you about the game that I've been playing for the past 3 years, almost consistently, Marvel Heroes. Well, now it's called Marvel Heroes 2016. When this game first launched in June, July 2013, it was shit. It was horrible. It was grindier than anything you've seen. The mechanics were all over the place. It wasn't a great game. It wasn't in a good place. Over the years, it's gotten a lot of feedback. The team at Gazillion kind of probably grew, got a little better. They've applied patches. They've improved the game significantly. It's a lot less grindy now. It's still friendly to new players, but still kind of caters to our quote-unquote veterans of the game. One of the main complaints, though, that I personally don't have, like I haven't done everything in the game, although I've clocked it about 1,000 plus hours already, is that there's not a lot of end game content. But I guess it's probably a case to case thing because they have a lot of events. I think this week even there's this month. I mean, there is a anniversary event. It's their 3rd year anniversary, and you collect these birthday cakes that you could trade in for really awesome loot. One of the main items in the game that you really kind of have to grind for, that you have to farm. You do legendary quests to get Odin marks, and you trade in those Odin marks for legendary items. You see, look at the level grade on my legendary item. It's at level 80, and that's worth 1,000 Odin marks. And every legendary quest gives you about 3 or 2. If you do a shared quest, that gives you probably 9 or 8 or 10 or 11. So 1,000 of those to get Odin marks. And the event, in the 3rd year anniversary, you could collect 365 of these birthday cake slices. You trade them into a vendor, into the vendor in Avenger's Tower, and he will give you a birthday cake. You click that cake, and it will give you an explosion, and you get a random level 80 legendary item, which you could trade in for like 800 Odin marks. So that's a pretty cool prize for a good event. The last event was the Civil War event, which kind of revolved around the movie, and that was fun too. It gave you new modes, new enemies. You gave us this wicked costume that we have on our Iron Man right now. And so that's the thing. They have a lot of these events, so you feel like you're missing out if you don't play on certain days. While there may be a lack of end game content for a lot of players, some players, like it's still fine with me. But I don't want to talk about the state of the game. What I want to talk about is the state of Iron Man. So this is my Iron Man. Look at him in his full glory. This is the Mark 46 costume. Yeah, Mark 46 Civil War movie costume, which I think is pretty cool because it looks a lot like the Bleeding Edge armor. So I think it's as comic accurate as it can get for a movie costume. Okay, so Iron Man, while he used to be the leader of the bunch in terms of damage output and survivability, so he was the first one to get reviewed. Like, he was the first one to get an overhaul on his powers. They call it the New 52 review. Or a level 52 review. New 52 is DC. Oops. So he was the first one to get it. So that's how he got the signature power and everything. So he used to be really good. But then other heroes started getting better, and then the power creep slowly crept in, and now he's kind of middle of the road. Not even in terms of survivability, he's pretty squishy for a guy encased in a suit of high-tech armor. He goes down pretty fast, which is kind of sad. War Machine, my War Machine, isn't even as well geared. But he survives. He survives a lot better than Iron Man does. Like, look at his health; it's at 27,000. Well, he doesn't have as much spirit, but he does better than Iron Man in every regard, which shouldn't be the case. Because Iron Man is a 600 Eternity Splinter hero. Right? He's one of the more expensive heroes in the game. He's at the level of Deadpool, who costs 600 Eternity Splinters and 1,350 G. 1,350 G costs you about a little over $10, because $10 will get you, $10 gets you 1,150 G, and you need 1,350 for him, so you have to buy the $5. And this is already at a 15% bonus, so you have to buy an extra. So he costs $15, a $15 hero. So why is he one of the weaker heroes in the game? I hope that Gazillion eventually gets around to him and kind of buffs up his survivability, because that's the only thing he's lacking, to be honest. His damage can stay where it is. Maybe get a buff a little bit, but it's his survivability that's lacking. He goes down very quick. So apart from that, I have a couple more complaints. But for the most part, I enjoy playing as Iron Man. So let's go over my build for Iron Man. For the medallion, I use the Red Onslaught medallion. I crafted this from a recipe that you buy from Hammer Bay. You buy that recipe, your crafter learns it, and you get to craft a Red Onslaught medallion. Or you could just head into the raid and pray you get one there. I also use, for all the blessings, and I think this goes for everyone who plays this game, for all their artifacts, it's always Hela. Always Hela. Because Hela, the Hela blessing gives you 5% additional brutal damage flat. Right? So if you have like 30% brutal damage, you get 35 with one blessing. Right? And you get an additional 20 if all 4 blessings are present, so that you get like 50% brutal damage, which is what I think Iron Man has right now. Not brutal damage, brutal strike rating. So if you have brutal strike rating at 30%, you get 52% with all the blessings. So let's go over the artifacts. I use the Crossbones Teaching Credentials mainly because for when I want to play a little serious, I use a weaving build, which is a mechanic. Beam weaving is a mechanic not intended by Gazillion. So Iron Man has a couple damage over time powers. And I think the way damage over time powers, I'm not really sure, but I think the way damage over time powers work is that they're on some sort of internal cooldown. For brutal striking and for critical strike, something like that. I'm not entirely sure. I hope someone in the comment explains it to me. I just know that if you do beam weaving, you do a lot more damage than you would if you were to just stick with one beam for one damage over time beam. So I use Crossbones Teaching Credentials for the energy damage because he is an energy hero. His beaming deals energy damage, and mostly for the brutal damage rating that stacks up to 3 times. Every time you critically hit, and critical hitting in this game is not all that uncommon. If you see all of the orange marks, those are all critical hits. So I just stacked all 3 of my 395 brutal damage, which was over 1,000 something. I also use Kevlar plated helmet. Oh, sorry, this one comes from Crossbones. It was introduced in the Civil War event, and this one as well, Kevlar plated helmet, comes from Crossbones, also introduced in the Civil War event, and I use it for the additional 3 fighting every 5 seconds for 5 seconds every time you critically hit. And again, critical hits pretty common. I also like that there's an additional critical hit chance for all my ranged attacks, which is what my beam weaves are. The improved arc reactor is another Civil War event introduced, a Civil War exclusive artifact introduced during the event. And the reason why I use this and why a lot of people think it's best in slot for Iron Man is because he converts suit power, which is this resource down here. It's kind of like your mana, your spirit, your I don't know, your your energy, I guess, that you expend when you cast spells or power. What Iron Man does is he turns that resource into damage rating. 300% of your total spirit is additional damage rating, as it says here. So I get about 4,182 additional damage rating because of the spirit that I have. And this gives you about 300 suit power spirit, which means 300% of that is damage rating. It also gives you energy. Energy is a stat that increases your base energy damage as well as the cost to energy powers, your casting cost. And earlier I talked about the 3 fighting from this artifact. So fighting is a stat that gives you base damage, additional base damage, brutal strike rating, which is the percentage of chance in which you brutally strike, and additional brutal damage rating. Brutal strike is essentially a crit of a crit. So when you crit, there's a chance that it crits again into a brutal strike. And then I use Blessed Gem of the Cursed. And Gem of the Cursed is one of those artifacts that benefits everyone. And it's fairly cheap these days. You could get it for a few blessings because it drops pretty commonly from Curse, at least, and all of the other heroes, all of the other villains. For his relic, I use the Relic of Gibberim just for the suit power again, because again, 222 suit power, 300% of that additional damage. I use a energy damage Uru forged item. I forget what this one is called specifically. For the additional 200 damage rating, the enchantment is the power of dupe. The power dupe. Mainly because when you hit with an energy power, you get 839 critical damage rating and recover 17 spirit or 17 suit power. And when you hit with a physical power, which is what this power deals and those missiles deal, you get additional 2,901 brutal damage, which is pretty significant. So that's a really good, fairly expensive enchantment to get just because of the dupe rune, but rune word. I don't know, it's a rune word or an enchantment, but this thing, I think it is a rune word. Is it a rune word? Is that the right term to use? Hold on. Oh, it is a rune word. Yes, not enchantment, not a blessing. It's a rune word. Power dupe. Okay. For my legendary, it's Makran. For the suit power, for the health, damage rating, critical hit rating. That proc, I don't know how useful that thing is. I don't really depend on it a lot. But it's 400,000 energy damage to enemies around you. The ring, I go with the Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters class ring, which you can get from the Danger Room after earning about 1,500 Danger Room credits. You get physical and energy damage, minimal physical and energy damage. You get some health. And then what's awesome here would be the procs, right? So if you hit with an energy power, you get 286 critical hit rating, physical power, 286 brutal strike rating. And because of the way Iron Man works, these two procs are pretty much on all the time. And when they're both on, you get intelligence and fighting. For intelligence, it's I think an overlooked stat most of the time. It's additional critical hit rating, additional critical damage rating, additional suit power, minimal suit power, and XP. You get additional XP. For summoners, this is the stat that you can really kind of want to build because it gives you additional summoned ally damage. For the costume, I use the Iron Man Mark 46. And I put in mostly critical damage rating. I forget what they're called. Affixes? Yeah. Suit affixes, costume affixes, except for the 4th level. Because I don't think Iron Man is durable enough to just keep on pouring critical damage on the costume. So I kind of wanted to help out his survivability a bit and just added that. Although I may change it eventually to critical damage rating, but for now this is serving me well. For the costume core, I am using 81 health regeneration passive per second, and then 400 life on hit, and the popular regeneration of 25% up to 3,000 of your health and suit power. And the reason why this is what I'm using instead of one with a invulnerability for 2 seconds every time you use a medkit fix is because I couldn't find one. I haven't found one with all three or a couple of those, so this is what I'm sticking with for now. The insignia is not the best, but I like that it has critical damage and some attack speed. I find that Iron Man's attack speed is also a little lacking, so I wanted to buff that a little bit. And when you hit with any power, you get 287 damage rating, and there's a small chance that you summon a Groot who fights with you. So he's a good little distraction. But this isn't the best one. I'll probably swap it out when I find something a little better. For my pet, it's got 6% base health. I'll try re-rolling this, or regaining it and getting a better stat. Probably 8%, but so far this is the best I got. 50 suit power, 2% base energy damage, 1 plus 1 rank to all signature powers, and 3 energy. I could also go with 3 fighting, I guess. This one kind of works for him too, right? Because it's 2 to ultimate powers, additional 2 to... Oh! Speaking of ultimate powers, Iron Man has the worst ultimate power in the entire game. He summons the Iron Legion. He calls it the House Party Protocol from Iron Man 3. And they kind of help you out, but it doesn't do as much damage as the other ultimates in the game, so it's one of the worst. And plus 3 fighting, but so far this has been working for me, so I'm sticking with this. In terms of powers, team up. Let's talk about team up. So I use rescue. Let's get at it. All right. Oh, wrong button. So let's talk about team up. I use rescue for the lore. Nothing else. Mostly the lore. But also because she heals you, so helps out Iron Man's survivability. She buffs your damage a bit, and she stuns enemies and does a little, fairly decent damage. So it's a good team up to have. A better team up for healing and damage increase would be Clea, but not lore accurate, so no Clea for me. Not for Iron Man. Okay, in terms of powers, you can go away. In terms of powers, I use the beam weaving technique. I maxed out repulsor barrage and channel repulsors, as well as the signature. The Unibeam I also maxed out, not because it's a great power. It does a lot of damage, but it can use a lot of improvements to make it a little more viable end game. But because of lore, I love me some Iron Man. And then we have Arc Reactor Enhancement. This is what I maxed out because it gives you additional damage rating. It gives you more suit power, and it gives you 300% of your suit power as damage rating. So that's really good to max out. I put 1 point in Jet Boot Flight just so there's flight. I think they're going to change the movement mechanic soon, the movement power mechanic. They're going to give 1 movement power mechanic to everyone, and it's going to be a free point. So everyone has one. I also put 1 point in... I put 1 point in Arc Reactor Overload. I don't put 1 point in all of the toggles too. I'll see as you see later. But this one isn't the toggle. So all it does is it restores your suit power and damages enemies around you. I put 1 power in this toggle. It's supposed to keep you alive longer, but it doesn't really work for me. This used to be much better, but I think it was an unintended buff. So I didn't max this out, just gave 1 point to it. Might change eventually, but for now, we'll put 1 point in that. I use Death from Above because it looks cooler than Jet Assisted Slam, has a wider range, has a bigger AoE, higher damage. So yeah, this is what we use. This is also what we use to proc. Oh yeah, apart from the whistles, this is what we use to proc the physical damage. Procs. I think I maxed out Missile Control System for the critical hit rating and the damage that your micro missiles do. Physical damage. I put 1 point in Life Support Systems. This revives you when you go down. In game modes where your defeats are counted towards a total, and when you reach that total, you fail the encounter, every time this skill is automatically activated, it counts as a defeat. So you don't get ported back to the start of the map, or you don't, I don't know, for whatever consequence is on that mode for dying. So that doesn't happen. So you get revived on the spot, plus you deal some damage around you, but it still counts, right? So that's something to keep in mind. The missile powers here to the right are some of the better powers for Iron Man. It deals damage over time in terms of burning, I think some of them do. One of them does. And then they're overall really good powers to have. Oh, here, Wrist Rocket does. But since it's not entirely lore accurate for me, I decided not to go with it. It's MCU lore accurate, but not comic book lore accurate. So I felt like I needed to go more with movement, some movement power, and some beams. I still went with Jericho Bombardment though, mainly because it's a nice dot, and I've seen like Iron Man does that from time to time. He calls in artillery strikes from his satellite, something like that. So I'm just kind of imagine that's what it's doing. So I'll show you some of the powers. Let's go to a training dummy. So this is what the ultimate looks like.
House party protocol activated.
So nothing great. It's just him calling down. And that lasts for a while. That's... Maybe you can call down... Oh, she's late to the party. Alright, bye. Okay. Repulsor Blast. Or sorry, channeled... Repulsor Barrage into channeled. This is what beam weaving looks like. And this deals more damage than it's supposed to, at least from what I've read and from my experience as well. This is the Unibeam, Death from Above, Signature, and restoring your suit power with the Overload. So yeah, there you have it. That's my Iron Man. So let's go jump into some content and see how well he does.
Show them what Elven Blade can do. Drown them in the deepest mud.
It's crude, but it might be useful.